It is not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. So what is evolution? Basically, it is a theory to explain the origin and the development of all life here on Earth. It claims that all life have shared ancestors that can be traced back to the earliest cells. For example, you probably know that humans evolved from a species of ape, and dogs have evolved from a species of wolf. But how do species evolve and change over time? These fish are all from the same species and live in the same community. One fish has a slightly larger tail fin. This change happened through a process called mutation. It is a small mistake in the DNA, in this case causing the larger tail fin in the fish. Now let's imagine that fish has more success finding food due to an increase in speed, making it a more efficient hunter. Over time, this fish will be more healthy and be able to have offspring that also carry his mutation. Soon the fish unable to find food will die out, and the only remaining fish will be the ones carrying this new mutation. Just keep in mind this is a simplified version of how these mutations occur, and usually the changes are much smaller and take generations and generations to actually be seen and have some sort of significant impact. So who came up with this theory? And what kind of evidence was used to back up this explanation? Even though there was previous research done into this topic, the man credited with popularizing the theory of evolution is the man quoted at the beginning of this video, Charles Darwin. He found his evidence in a species of finches that lived in the Galapagos Islands. Over many years, due to a finite amount of food, the finches spread around the island looking for the best chances for their survival. This is simplified, but imagine 3 groups of finches. One migrated north, one south, and one west. Now this is where interesting changes started to occur. Because the finches looked for their diet all around the island, they ended up finding different foods, and their beaks started to develop and change over many generations depending on what kind of food they were consuming. The finches, with a more fruit-based diet, developed to have a bigger beak to squash and carry as much fruit as possible. The finches, with a more nut-based diet, developed a pointy beak to punch holes into the nuts in order to crack the hard shell. And finally, the finches who had a more plant-based diet developed a very sharp beak that would help them break down the tough plants. These species of finches were used by Darwin as his evidence that the species who are most willing to change and are great at adapting are going to be the species that survive. This process, where the species that adapts and changes the best over generations, allowing them to survive and have the healthiest and best offspring, it was coined by Charles Darwin to be natural selection, also known as survival of the fittest. As a conclusion to this video, I want to show you an example of a simplified version of the tree of life to help you visualize and give you an idea how all species came from the same ancestors. As you can see here, it started with the earliest cells. They bound together and formed bacteria and sponges living in the water. The next species to develop were jellyfish and blind worms. After millions of years of evolution, the first land species had evolved, such as starfish and frogs. A couple million years later, more complex species such as fish and reptiles had evolved. Finally, mammals as we know them today had evolved, including our own species. Now keep in mind this is a very simplified version of the tree of life. It was mainly used to help you visualize how species became more and more complex, but they can still start from a very simple structure. I highly encourage you to look up a more complex and realistic tree of life online and actually really study of what species came after each other. It's really interesting. Fun fact. The fact that we get goosebumps is a direct result of our ancestors having more hair. When our hairier ancestors got cold or felt in danger, the hair would stand up to warm them and make them seem bigger than they are. I hope you learned something and that this video helped you visualize a few concepts. Thank you very much for watching.